This is Kayla, everyone, and she's a fashion designer by trade and an environmental activist. She is the founder of Fiber Lab, which is a kind of a social enterprise that works towards building regenerative fashion systems and using design thinking to create local and sustainable circular solutions. Kayla and I met at LCF when we started working on Fiber Lab together. So, Kayla, tell us a little bit about Fiber Lab.
Thanks, Hannah, for the lovely introduction. I'm like, wow. Fiber Lab really started as a research project for my master's, where I was kind of trying to answer the question, can fashion ever be truly sustainable? And furthermore, can it go past just being sustainable to actually being a place of regeneration? So I was looking at some examples and found that it could probably be possible if you look at like the whole systems approach. So if you kind of do everything locally, you source circular materials, you help to involve the community in the process and all of these things. So that is how Fiber Lab started. We're still in the beginning stages of everything, but long-term goal, I think it could be possible to really regenerate communities and build like a sustainable fashion system in London specifically.
It is a really, really hot topic. It has been a hot topic in the industry, sustainability, for a really long time now. But I feel now more than ever, people are like rethinking things because of coronavirus. People
Mhm.
are maybe consuming more mindfully. They're thinking about where the products are coming from. They're shopping local. All of these things. So coronavirus has sparked a kind of awakening when it comes to our consumption, but it's also like disrupting supply chains.
Mhm.
A lot of I feel like a lot of companies are now putting sustainability on the back burner in terms of being a priority because it is tends to be quite costly and
Mm.
brands are struggling. So how much of a priority do you think it is for brands right now being sustainable in the time of COVID-19?
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right that the current crisis is kind of like sparking this kind of frenzy of like, what do we do next? And I think that's actually a really great moment for brands to kind of think about what their next steps are going to be. A lot of the smaller brands I think are really struggling just to figure out like how they're going to survive and what their next moves are going to be. But as for the bigger brands, I think there is going to be this like mentality shift of like we have to do something
Yeah.
more significant for people to want to buy into it. Um, and I think going forward, it kind of allows this moment to really reconsider like priorities and what those are going to be like.
Yeah.
And just I think brands like surviving and I think a lot of production will become more local too. Hopefully, I think there's kind of like this backlash against like global trade, and I'm not going to say this is right or wrong, but like the made in China is kind of taking a toll.
Yeah.
There's kind of like this online internet backlash towards that. So I think hopefully there will be like a move back towards more local um, manufacturing and production, hopefully in London and hopefully in the US.
Yeah. This we're also like seeing this rise of the good guy brands. We've got all of these brands stepping in,
Mm.
being socially responsible and trying to support their local communities. Do you feel like social responsibility will take like center stage for brands
Mm.
in after all of this is over, if and when, but after all of
Mm.
this is over, do you think social responsibility will be kind of like a prerequisite for you to operate your fashion business?
Yeah, well, I certainly hope it becomes a prerequisite because that would be great. And
Yeah.
during this week is Fashion Revolution Week, and I think this is like their biggest, even though all of the events they had planned for in-person interaction are now all being held digitally, they're
Yeah.
actually reaching so many more people now.
Yeah.
So Fashion Revolution started from the Rana Plaza disaster, and that has sparked like a social responsibility kind of incentive among big brands because they have their trending hashtag who made my
Yeah.
clothes. So that is like asking brands and kind of demanding that response. And I think that is gonna definitely pull forward even more especially because there's such a disparity between people who are really struggling during this virus and people
Yeah.
who are maybe a little more secure. So I think there might be this, um, yeah, this incentive for brands to kind of help all these people who have been severely affected,
Yeah.
in their local communities as well. Like, the people who are maybe shopping at H&M and Forever 21 maybe can't do that anymore. So how are those brands gonna step up to help those people as well?
And also, they're kind of for me now, the brands that I'm like kind of supporting at home are the brands that are supporting their communities, because in a way I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm also giving back, so I'm using the brand as a vehicle to do more than just sit at home, and
Mm-hmm.
which is vital. We should all be sitting at home. It's very crucial
Mm-hmm.
that we all be doing that simple but very crucial task. But I feel like I can do so much more through a brand if a brand is being socially responsible, giving back to the community. And I'll think that even after all of this is over, that we're all going to still continue to support those brands that stepped in and
Yeah.
tried to help their communities. But there is a really big struggle in the industry right now, which is with has a lot to do with stock levels. A lot of brands have been left with so much stock now, and
Mm-hmm.
it's always been quite a controversial topic in the industry, because
Mm-hmm.
whether brands got rid of their stock through incineration or just through it in a landfill. Do you think that stock levels are going to be reconsidered in the fashion industry? Like, it's going to be revamped? Should we really be producing so much when we've just discovered that we need so little?
Yeah, well, there's actually an even bigger problem with stock right now is because all these brands, now that the crisis is hit and people aren't buying stuff, now they're not paying those factories and those workers. So they might have the stock, but now they're not even paying for it,
Yeah.
which is even worse because all these people who are in third world countries that are producing these garments, they depend on that to buy their food. And now, if the factories are closed and they're not getting paid for the last month, it's like we're leaving all these people hanging. So
Yeah.
that's also a really big issue. But in
I
terms
feel
of
like there's this
stock,
kind of there's this clash where you want to continue to
yeah,
try to support the garment workers in all of these places, but at the same time, do they really need to be producing so much? Do they really need
right.
to have all of this stock?
The thing is, they don't. And I think post COVID, a lot of people are going to be in a very different financial state as well. So they're not going to be able to be buying as much as they used to because after this crisis, we're going to be in an economic downturn, I assume. Um, so a lot of people aren't going to be able to be buying fashion like they used to be, and it's not going to be as much of a priority. So I think that kind of allows brands this moment to maybe reconsider their supply chains and hopefully move everything to a more like local and like pre-order system where they're not going to have the ability to maybe mass produce and take that risk on having so much stock left over. They're going to be maybe more cautious about having people pre-order things, which is something I'm already seeing from brands. It's like we don't have the capacity to mass produce, so if you guys would be interested in buying something for next season, would you consider pre-ordering?
Yeah,
So
I'm always been a fan of that, actually.
yeah.
I think it was Moda Operandi who kind of had this initiative where they were going to they were going to have a capsule collection, I think, every couple of months, where you could just pre-order from, and you could choose your size, and you could choose, I think you could even customize certain pieces from brand,
Mm,
which is always a good thing when it comes to being, you don't end up producing as much, and you don't end up
mm-hmm.
with a lot of stock. But I had here Helen Riley, who's the fashion acquisition manager at eBay, said that fashion brands must think carefully and responsibly about stock levels after the coronavirus pandemic, which makes us think about all the other parts of the industry, the fashion weeks, the
Mm-hmm.
um, everything. And in a way, it's, I think, a time to be as creative as possible. It's a time for brands. It's like a rebirth in a way, because
Mm-hmm.
they've realized, oh, maybe we can just stream our shows, or maybe we
Yeah.
can just, it's like it's a glorious time for fashion, I feel, in a way.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really interesting because not just Fashion Revolution, but Extinction Rebellion have been trying so hard to get Fashion Week to kind of stop doing what they've been doing for so long, Whereas producing all these samples, throwing these big fashion shows, having people travel from all over the world in to sit there for 20 minutes and watch a show. And
Yeah.
now it's like, I think there's going to be a whole new section of virtual shows and streaming and like,
I think everything is gonna be so. I think it's just a time for people to flourish creatively, brands to flourish creatively, and try and find all of these new ways to. And we're
mhm,
seeing lots of other things, technological advances like virtual sampling on the buying side and all that. But
mhm.
in terms of just communications and like Fashion Week has been so unnecessary for a really long time. I don't know if I should be saying that, but it's
I mean, it's kind of true. Like, we
all
just flick
things
through the photos and,
yeah, you watch the live stream on your
mhm.
phone. It's just a lot more convenient, let's say, and practical. But
Yeah, I think your point about customization is really important too, because a lot of the trend reports we're seeing now, it's all about customization. Like people just want something that's unique because you go around, you see everyone having the same stuff. They just want something that's unique that you put a little more effort into, and then it's going to last you longer in
and,
the long
and
run.
when something is customized for you, you keep it. You always keep it. You
Hmm.
never get rid of it. You never doesn't. It goes back and maybe into a circular economy, but you'll always keep it because it's yours and it was made for you. Um, and in the same way as pre-ordering, I guess, because it's just like not made for you, but they've produced that piece for you. They have actually.
Yeah,
So, um,
I think that's going to be a really big part going forward. Customization and hopefully like pre-ordering, um,
there's
local supply chains.
I've got a lot of friends. We always have this discussion about pre-ordering, and do you find that a lot of people are like afraid to do that in a way?
Mm,
Like pre-order something they haven't seen, haven't felt, haven't tried on, or haven't.
yeah.
And what do you think people brands can do to maybe tackle that? Maybe
Well, I
like
think,
have samples available in stores rather than maybe go and
yeah.
try your size on and then you can get it a few days later or depending on the lead time.
I should think that's really interesting point about stores. Like, what will retail stores be like? I feel like they're the most non-essential thing right now.
Yeah,
So,
online
what
now.
what are the future of retail stores? Like, even if we start loosening up restrictions and we start or we get a vaccine in however next year or something,
Yeah.
like, what is going to be the future of retail stores? Like, the high street is already burning. No one wants to go into the high street anymore. So, just the thought of that, like, I think this whole situation is making those things like buyers were reluctant to get virtual samples. Like, people are reluctant to pre-order things and look at samples virtually. But now that's like the only option. So it's pushing everyone to do
Yeah.
these things that we might not have wanted to do before.
And then on the other hand, you've got platforms going from online back to brick and mortar because they kind of think that
Mm,
there's this like click and brick approach to retail, like Rent the Runway are opening their brick and mortar stores right now, which is quite
mm,
bizarre for a platform that started completely online and had like a very online focused goal. So it'll be a really interesting time after all of this is over. Do we go
yeah.
back to how the retail structure was before, or do we have to make all the necessary changes? Um, and also, I think brands are discovering. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day who was saying, "Well, um, I've been able to do all my work from home. I don't have to go into the office. She's in finance. I don't have to go into the
Mm,
office anymore. I'm not only getting more work done, but I've saved costs on like traveling to, and even my boss said that he never understood why it doesn't make sense for her to, after all of this, go back to work because it's not efficient. She's doing a lot more at home.
hmm.
So maybe that'll mean that they won't have to have such a big space for their office anymore. Maybe it'll cut costs. Like there are so many things to think about
Yeah.
all over.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have, I guess, first of all, the luxury to be able to do their jobs at home, which is great, but then also coming to this realization that, we don't have to be waking up so early and commuting and spending an hour in traffic and going back and forth and doing all these things when really we can just be working from home.
Absolutely. Like you can like for example, it would take me about maybe 40 minutes to get to LCF
Hmm.
every day. So that's an hour and a half or two, just me just commuting around London to get from one class to the other or to a meeting or whatever. And now, like, as soon as I open my laptop, I'm in my meeting. And as soon as I close it or I open it again, I'm in my class. So I've
Hmm.
just saved a lot of time as well. So I feel a lot more efficient, which is strange because I didn't feel that way at the beginning.
Right. Yeah. I
Uh,
feel a lot less tired too. I find that just the amount of energy you have to spend
yeah,
like running around a city to get where you gotta go, and I have a meeting over here and I have class over here and I have all these things. It's
yeah,
like I'm always exhausted, but I
yeah,
think it's really a great thing that people are kind of taking this moment to pause and
yeah,
have to stay home because it's like we're realizing we don't need to go that hard. We don't need to be like
yeah,
working 24/7, producing the most stuff, like doing all these things to the highest extent. We just need to be like taking time to relax and like live a happy life
yeah.
sometimes. And
I can't imagine myself going back to the lifestyle I had before. It was too hectic. I just realized that it was
yeah.
really hectic. It took coronavirus for me to realize that it was a really, really hectic lifestyle.
Hmm.
But there is this kind of community feel. We all feel like we're all in this together. We're like unified and united against
Hmm.
coronavirus. Everyone in the world has paused. And even though everyone is socially distancing, we feel like this hyper connectedness
Hmm.
because we're all like online and we're all communicating, we're all sharing news, we're all talking to each other, we're speaking to friends we haven't spoken to in a while, and
Yeah.
just reconnecting with ourselves and our friends. And Fiber Lab is involved in a lot of community building as well. Do you think people do you worry that people go back to a lifestyle of like hyper consumption when this is all over? Or do you think people are realizing now how important it is to like consume mindfully and not go back to that really hectic life?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. But I think that this moment, at least for me and the people I'm talking to and the things I'm kind of reading on the internet, is that it really is like you're just trying to stay alive, stay healthy, make sure you have food, like all of the most essential human basic needs you're worried about. And like, sure, I might have thought about, oh, I'm gonna swap this, I'm gonna sell these clothes, I'm gonna do all these things with my wardrobe. Now I'm like, I don't even care. I've been wearing the same like three things around the house. I'm like,
Yeah,
I've got way too much clothes. It's
yeah,
like, especially like the economic side of things, like people aren't gonna be wanting to spend a lot of money to go out and go shopping. I'm like, that is like the last thing I can think of right now. It's
yeah.
like,
I
I
can't
don't think that's
imagine.
gonna be,
Yeah, I can't even imagine going back to that life.
yeah.
And um, I think just think being at home and just realizing you don't need as much
Hmm.
to get by. It's really somebody just I had a few questions from like some people, but because I was
Okay, cool.
kind of focusing on our conversation, but like a lot of people have been asking about like investing in wardrobes and buying like quality pieces and not over quantity. But I wanted you to just talk to everyone online right now about the effects, the impact of fast fashion, something I speak about a lot on my page, but it'd be really good
Mm,
maybe shed a little bit of light on the impact of
yeah,
fashion.
that is such a big topic though.
Sure, a lot of people know about the Rana Plaza disaster. So if you want, you can just talk to them a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Rana Plaza disaster is kind of what sparked, I think, like the mass, like sustainable fashion, ethical fashion kind of movement. That's what sparked Fashion Revolution. And if you don't already know Fashion Revolution, check them out on Instagram because they have a lot of really good info. They can do a way better job of explaining all the
Yeah,
things than I probably can. But that was the most deadliest
yeah,
kind of accident that has happened in the fashion industry where over 1,000 people died in a factory in Bangladesh. When they were working overtime, there were cracks in the building, and people said, I don't feel safe going in there. They said, you're not going to get paid if you don't go in. And it was an illegal building with an extra floor and generators on the top. So they were just trying to bust out as much product as fast as they could. And just really tragically, the whole thing just collapsed with like, I think almost 1,300 people who died or were injured.
yeah,
And that just spread like wildfire across like all of the news stations. There was like H&M labels, Primark labels, Walmart labels found in like the rubble. And it's just like a really terrible image if you see like the photo. It's just like,
Yeah, it makes me
why?
really emotional when I think about it. I always feel like I'm gonna cry when I think about it. And I often when I talk about fast fashion on Instagram, I get a lot of backlash, which is from people who will tell me that what about people who can't afford
Mm,
a lot of things that are sustainable, and a lot of things that are luxury are so expensive.
mm-hmm,
Um, but for me, at the end of the day, I think it's this idea. It's a mentality kind of
mm-hmm,
where you don't need to buy as much as you are. There's nothing wrong with buying something that you like, but as long as you keep it or you put it back into a circular economy, it's this kind of, because we grew up, or we're in this time of like social media and always wanting to wear new things and post them online. I have friends who go into into a Zara or into a Zara's doing a little bit better than all the other fast fashion brands, but um, might go in once a week to buy something. And
mm-hmm.
I find that crazy that every week you need to buy something new. And
Right.
I don't see it in that way. I'd rather like find local designers that I like, support the local industry, and I think maybe this is a time where we're all at home. It's a time to reflect on these things,
Mm-hmm,
reflect on our consumption, how we consume, who makes our clothes,
mm-hmm.
where they're made, who makes them, under what conditions are they being made.
Yeah,
A lot of things.
definitely. I mean, I think as people, I mean, I gotta say, at one point I was one of those people who went into Zara and bought something all the time because I was a designer working in New York and you always had to come to work looking fresh and new with something cool. But this crisis allows people that time to realize I'm surviving without going into Zara every week.
Yeah,
Maybe that's not necessary. Maybe I don't need to do that. And
yeah,
maybe I should just, love what I already have. You've been wearing the same stuff around your house, so what's the point? And you don't need to like buy super luxury, organic, most sustainable designer thing to like be sustainable. I have tank tops that I bought as a teenager from who knows, Forever 21 that I'm still wearing around as pajamas. Like
yeah,
it's just about finding that thing that's like, okay, I like this. I'm going to be conscious about buying it and wearing it for a long time.
yeah. Absolutely. That's why I think it's more a mentality. It's not so much what you buy or where you buy it from,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the responsibility falls on the brand itself and its ethical practices.
Right.
But it's also buy things that you love, buy things that you're going to keep, um, buy things because I don't know. It's just I feel like there's this kind of love-hate relationship with clothes now. People want to buy clothes because they think they have to always buy new clothes.
Right.
But buy pieces that you love. There are so many cool things to do. Vintage thrifting and buying vintage pieces,
Mm-hmm.
supporting local brands, and
Right.
a lot of cool initiatives in London also happening. You and I were talking about all the events that we could have had for Fiber Lab.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing to t think about now, but we had such a great event planned where we are gonna have all these different like sustainable brands and initiatives come and different people from the community who might not be interested in sustainable fashion come and like hear
Yeah,
something new or find out some new bit of information or get inspired by people who are like living and dressing more sustainably. So
yeah.
that would have been great, but
Yeah, but we can still have these talks. Everyone can always tune into Fiber Lab, and we've basically moved events online.
mhm,
So we'll be talking to really cool people. Kayla's going to be talking to some really interesting people on Fiber Lab, and tips and tricks, and you'll learn about new businesses and new, cool things happening around the world, not just in London, and just people that Fiber Lab might collaborate with in the future and stuff like that.
mhm.
So I would ask everybody to follow Fiber Lab after this. I'm going to put the page and tag them. But
Awesome.
we can leave everybody with on a more positive note.
Right.
That I think this is just a time of reflection, a time of just. I feel like it's a rebirth for the fashion industry. Everything's going to be revamped. I think that the fashion industry has needed a revamp for a really, really long time. Fashion has had to slow down,
Hmm.
and you had no choice. You have to slow down, and it had to slow down. So I hope that we don't all rush back to that kind of hectic lifestyle. If there's anything
Right.
you want to add for our viewers before we
Right. If there's anything you guys like have a question about or you want to hear more about, just shoot us a message and we can try to like interview someone or have like a talk just about like if you want to know more about like the environmental impacts of fast fashion or the social impacts of fast fashion, like we can totally host a talk on that as well.
absolutely. I
But
think
yeah,
that's really, really important because sometimes I feel like a lot of people don't know. I know that because we're in fashion school and we learn about these things all the time, and we're interested in these things and we want to change things. Sorry, we got a question. Amazing talking points to think about. Do either of you have views regarding packaging, especially when it comes to online? We seem to be drowning in it.
mm, well, I think there is uh this really interesting movement, at least in the sustainability like materials movement, where there's like this really big push towards commercializing like compostable packaging, recyclable packaging, more biodegradable packaging. So it is being worked on kind of behind the scenes, and I think it will slowly start to trickle in to like the mainstream. But it's about asking brands like before you order something, like I just want to make sure there's no like plastic on this, you know,
Absolutely.
when it gets delivered,
That
and
was
then
what
that puts the pressure on them.
yeah. And I think on Amazon, there's like an option for like no packaging or least packaging possible or something like that. I
Hmm.
really, really believe in the power of the consumer having like a say in things. And if you get bombarded with emails from customers saying, please get rid of your packaging, then brands do act. They have to. Um,
And calling them out on social media, I feel like is even more effective than
and
sending an
name and
email
shame,
sometimes.
shame.
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
totally.
yeah. But Glossier had an issue with their bubble wrap, didn't they? And now they're trying to find other ways. But I think it came from customers saying, oh, your bubble wrap is so unsustainable.
I
And
know they brand themselves as this like hip, young,
yeah,
cool brand, and it's like, why are you guys thinking about sustainability? Like,
yeah,
hello, totally missing the mark there.
yeah. But I love talking to you, Kayla. This was amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you
this was
for
really
sharing.
fun. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing all these like cool insights with us. I'm trying to keep my talks a little bit. I went over my talks and I couldn't record them. I think on Instagram, if your talks go over an hour, then you can
Mm.
record them. I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah. So everybody follow Fiber Lab. I'm gonna put the page up now, and they're gonna have so many cool talks on the page, and they're gonna be talking to so many interesting people, and it'll give you an insight into the fashion industry as a whole, but especially the impact of fast fashion and ways we can all be more sustainable, more ethical, and stuff like that. So Kayla, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was
Thanks
incredible.
everyone for watching.
Thank you, everyone. Bye, Kayla. I'll speak to you later.
Bye. See ya.
Bye.